In Deadlock, the word tempo is thrown out and used a ton, with saying our team has a ton of tempo, the enemy has tempo, how do we use this tempo, and whatever. Now, people throw the word out, but they really don't understand what it means, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. My name is DuckFilms, a former Turner's Ranked player and team analyst for Rose Syndicate, and today we're going to be looking at the terminology of tempo and just what goes into it. And if you like this type of content or want to see more, do me a favor, hit that like button, of course subscribe to the channel. It's literally the best way of helping me out and get the word around. But without further ado, let's dive straight in. Now, when it comes to understanding tempo in Deadlock, tempo is essentially your team's ability to control the pace of the game. A team with a good, in quotations, tempo isn't just reacting to whatever the enemy does, they're constantly making plays that force the enemy to respond. The goal is just to stay one step ahead, push a wave, take an objective, spend your souls, rotate to another lane, and create another advantage before the enemy has time to stabilize and react. In layman's terms, that is the core fundamental ideology of tempo in a game like Deadlock. Now, one of the biggest pieces or parts of tempo is dictating when fights happen and when they don't, which is essentially pace control. Just because you see an enemy doesn't mean you need to fight them. Good players recognize when their team is actually strong enough to fight and when they are better off backing away and accomplishing something else. For example, imagine your team just spent a large amount of souls while two enemies are still sitting on thousands of unspent souls. Even if the overall soul totals are relatively close, your team temporarily has more usable power because you've converted those souls into actual items. That's essentially a tempo window. You want to recognize these little moments and immediately look for something you can accomplish with them and capitalize on. Now, the opposite is also true. If your team has 15,000 unspent souls collectively, taking a random fight before shot beam can throw away your advantage, sometimes the best tempo play is simply pushing the wave, disengaging, buying your items, and then regrouping. Controlling tempo means understanding in theory. This is why when you look at it at the perspective of the laning phase, when you have an item up in the lane, go for the fight because you have an item advantage. You're a lot stronger in that small time frame before they buy their own item that you're able to get some sort of advantage or some sort of play to either force the enemy to lose a ton of HP and go back to base, in theory losing them souls, or going for a tower dive to secure a even bigger lead. This is how you start the snowball effect and the tempo. Now, to quickly circle back around, controlling tempo means understanding a couple key ideas. When are we strong? When is the enemy weak? And what can we accomplish before that changes? Now, you don't have to fight constantly to play extremely fast. Disengaging is how you maintain tempo because you're denying the enemy the fight they want while preparing for a much stronger fight 30 seconds later. Now, this certainly is the case when you put it into the perspective when you're super far ahead of souls. The only way for the enemy to come back is to go for, a desperation pick, maybe catch someone off guard. So instead of just running out of your base at a super big lead randomly around the map by yourself, try to wait 30 seconds, have your extra teammate hover you while you're farming so you're not there risking yourself losing the game. Then the next idea of understanding tempo goes back to my elementary school days of the 7 habits, and that's talking about proactive plays. Teams with good tempo generally want to be the ones starting the sequence of events rather than constantly responding to the enemy. Instead of waiting for the enemy to start mid-boss and then scrambling to contest it, create the conditions that allow your team to start it first. Whether that's pushing the blue wave up, forcing an enemy to go back to their base by getting them extremely low, looking for a pick with a character like Bebop or Holiday, or establishing some sort of map control. From there, you want to convert that pressure you just created into the mid-boss, into maybe getting a big soul urn, or a walker, or another valuable objective. Now, this is extremely important because objectives aren't isolated events. One successful play should create the opportunity for another. For example, you get a pick, you get an elimination, use that to push the nearby wave, which in turn takes their walker, then use the resulting map pressure to threaten mid-boss. Now you've turned that one kill or pick into significantly more value than simply getting the souls from the kill and backing away. This is one of the biggest differences between teams that have good tempo and teams that don't. Bad teams get a kill and immediately scatter across the map to farm. We see this time and time again through all matches, whether it's High Eternus, competitive, Night Shift, all the way to the super bottom ranks. Whereas the good team essentially asks the question, what does this kill allow us to take? Kills and eliminations create temporary windows where the enemy has fewer players available. Tempo is about exploiting that window before it disappears. Now, sorry to throw off your tempo, get it? Never mind. If you haven't done so already, one of the best ways of supporting this channel is hitting that like button and subscribing. It genuinely helps me out a ton. I appreciate all the support in the recent videos. We're going for, 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year. That would be an insane milestone to hit, so definitely come join the pond. But anyways, back to the video. Now, forcing reactions is another ideology that comes from tempo in this game. One of the strongest ways to control tempo is through lane pressure. Pushing waves isn't just about collecting souls or damaging structures, you're creating problems that the enemy eventually has to solve. Imagine you push a lane, a massive wave towards an enemy walker. Somebody has to deal with it. If nobody responds, they lose map control and potentially lose the objective, that being the walker. But if somebody does respond, you've temporarily removed that player from somewhere else on the map. That's where the real value actually comes from. Now, if you push one lane and force an enemy to defend it, your team might suddenly have a temporary 6v5 somewhere else on the map. That can give you an opportunity to take mid-boss, contest an objective, invade somewhere in the enemy jungle, take another walker, or collapse on an isolated player, or simply establish deeper map control. This is why good macro players are constantly paying attention to these waves. You're not just mindlessly shoving lanes, you're using the lanes to move enemy players around the map, and this can become even stronger when multiple lanes are pressured simultaneously. That's why if 2 or 3 lanes are pushing towards the enemy at the same time, the enemy has to make a decision. Do we defend our lanes or do we contest the enemy team? Either choice potentially gives something up. That's what good tempo looks like. You're presenting the enemy with multiple problems faster than they can comfortably solve them. Now, tempo doesn't only come from movement and objectives, your itemization can also determine how quickly you're able to impact the game. A common mistake is building entirely around the strongest possible late game setup. You might look at an expensive item and think, once I get this, my build is going to be insane, and maybe it will be, but the problem is that you're sacrificing power right now to become stronger later. Sometimes that's completely fine, but other times buying 2 cheaper items immediately could make you significantly stronger for the next important fight. That's the idea behind tempo items. You're buying immediate power because you believe that power can be converted into something greater. For example, instead of sitting on thousands of souls waiting for one expensive luxury item, you might purchase cheaper survivability items, damage, mobility, or even utility. Now you're stronger for the next fight. The additional power helps you win the fight. And winning that fight gets you an objective, and that objective gives your team more souls and more map control. And suddenly, that cheaper purchase has generated significantly more value than simply saving your money. This is especially important during the early and mid game when relatively small item advantages can have a huge impact, whether it's gaining fortitude or something else. Now, if you're already ahead, tempo items can also help you snowball that advantage before the enemy reaches their own power spikes. Instead of saying, I'll be ready in 10 minutes after farming all these camps, you're saying, I'm strong right now. How do I use that strength to make sure they never get those 10 minutes? Now, if you didn't pay attention to any of the topics or cared about all of my yapping, at least listen to this last part. And if you want more in-depth teachings and coachings as well, definitely consider joining my Discord and sending me a DM that you would like some coaching. I'll be more than willing to help you. And that's the tempo cycle. The easiest way to understand all of this is to think of tempo as a, repeating cycle. Push waves, which leads to creating pressure, which then forces a response, then you gain numbers or map control, then you take an objective, then you spend your souls, then you push again. Each successful action creates the opportunity for the next one, and that's ultimately what separates having a lead from actually using the lead. You can be 20 souls ahead and still lose if you're wandering around the map farming without any purpose. Meanwhile, a team with good tempo can take a relatively small advantage and constantly turn it into something bigger. A kill becomes a walker becomes map control becomes mid-boss becomes another fight, that fight becomes another objective, and that's tempo. You're not giving the enemy enough time to reset, farm, regroup, and get back into the game. You're constantly using your current advantage to create the next advantage. And with all of that being said, hopefully this video has helped you learn something new, or maybe just try to inform you about the ideology and thinking behind the meaning of the word tempo. But like I said, hopefully this video has helped you in any way, shape, or form. And if you have any questions, ideas, comments, do let me know in the comment section down below. And if you want to check out any of my other Deadlock videos, definitely check out the channel. This has been DuckFilms, and I hope you have a great and, of course, safe day.